Ask yourself this question: how many medical researchers at Australian universities are also senior officers in our military? The answer, of course, would be near enough to none. Not so, it seems, with China. The Daily Telegraph has just revealed today that a recent Sydney University study into the transmission of coronavirus from animals to humans heavily involved a Wuhan Institute of Virology board member who just happens to be a colonel in the People's Liberation Army's Academy of Military Medical Sciences. It's collaborations like this, multiplied across the country and in a whole range of different endeavours, that make it hard for us to tell the truth about China. Clearly, it's almost impossible for our universities to be objective about China, given it provides 11% of their total enrolment and an even greater percentage of their total income. After all, these are the supposed champions of intellectual curiosity who think nothing of hosting 13 Confucius centres on Australian campuses staffed by the Chinese government, but were absolutely neurotic about the Ramsay Centre for Western Civilization. Put simply, too many important and well-connected Australians have too much of a vested interest in not rocking the China boat, even though it's more and more clear that China's interests and ours are often poles apart. You see, this is the big difference between China on the one hand and almost every other country, Australia included, on the other. China is a one-party state where all activity is supposed to be guided and controlled by the Communist Party. Every significant business in China has a Communist Party cell. Every significant enterprise has a cadre of commissars who are supposed to ensure it follows the correct party line, the business, on all things that matter. And it's an inescapable fact that the Chinese Communist Party runs the government and the government runs everything. There's really no such thing as a private enterprise or even private citizens in China, because the law is just what the party says it is, and every individual can be controlled by threats made against their family. China's historical view of itself as the world's middle kingdom has been vastly reinforced by Marxist-Leninist ideology, and now that the whole era of hide and bide, hiding your strength and biding your time, now that that's well and truly over, China demands respect bordering on subservience from all other countries, but in particular, its neighbours. It's no coincidence that a week or so after Australia sought an impartial international investigation into the Wuhan virus, China's now paying hardball against our $600 million barley trade with bogus anti-dumping threats. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have academic collaborations with China, and I'm certainly not saying that we shouldn't trade with China. Trading with China helps Australia pay our way. But we do have to realise that China is our strategic competitor as well as economic partner, and that everything China does has strategic intent. If we can take advantage of a deal with China, great. But only if we don't compromise our sovereignty in the process. Australia should never forget that for China, much of their worldview is seen through the prism of their mission to avenge the so-called century of humiliation and resume, as they see it, their rightful place as the world's #1 country. Indeed, the challenge of dealing with China is vastly greater than it ever was with the old Soviet Union, despite the presence of the same communist ideology. While Russia had a first-rate military, but only a third-rate economy, China is rapidly becoming the world's largest economy and will eventually be the world's strongest military power. Its objective, of course, is to buy us rather than have to beat us. It's because their system and its values are so different that we have to be incredibly careful about Chinese ownership of Australian businesses and our companies' dependency on Chinese supply chains, as well as our overdependence of our universities on Chinese students. We must understand that in all of this, The Chinese government can turn these relationships on and off like a tap to put pressure on us, not to mention steal our intellectual property without the slightest qualm or legal impediment. Much will change after this corona crisis is over, but much must change too, not least of all our willingness to stand up to China. For too long, we have taken their dollar and allowed big business to bully politicians into submission. But surely this virus has shown us, hasn't it, that it's time we took down the for sale sign and started to reassert Australia's sovereignty. Because standing up for our values is as much a part of national self-respect as it is anything else.